We are going, heaven knows where we are going. We know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Woyaya, 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 woyaya. We are woyaya, woyaya, woyaya. We are woyaya, woyaya.
Welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Fellowship. My name is Charles Loflin, and I have the distinct privilege of serving as your ministerial intern. And I am so glad that you've decided to take time out of your day to be with us. If you happen to be here during our 9 a.m. Facebook Live premiere or our 11 o'clock a.m. YouTube premiere, then I invite you to say hello in the chat so that we can welcome you in real time. As always, if you'd like to find out more information about our programming, you can visit our website at www.muuf.org. Again, I am delighted to have you here. Thank you so much.
The words of our chalice lighting are by Jane Yolen. Hush, this is a holy place, a sacred place, where the visions dwell, where the dreaming of a race began. Someone's God has stepped here, slept here, knelt here, dwelt here, spoken here of life, of death, of holy things. When you come, come softly, walk softly, talk softly, be mindful of the dreams. This is a sacred place. Hush.
We are on a journey, we're traveling to wholeness, we're building on the pathways of those who came before us. We are called to justice, freedom, equality, truth, compassion, and always love.
Where routes were misdirected and paths were not completed, new roads must be erected, old obstacles defeated.
We are called to justice, freedom, equality, truth, compassion, and always love. We're widening our highway on our journey to completeness. Our tunnels come through hatred, our bridges span between us. We are called to justice, freedom, equality, truth, compassion, and always love. Together we love stronger. Together we love sooner. Together we love longer. Together we love truer. We are called to justice, freedom, equality, truth, compassion, and always love. Always love.
In April 2016, the Standing Rock Sioux tribe stood up against the titans of industry to protect their region's water and sacred burial grounds from one of these oil pipelines, the Dakota Access Pipeline. Although the tribes and residents are often told that the pipelines are safe, there are countless oil leaks every year across the world. The leaks cause tremendous damage and destruction to plants, wildlife, and water. What started out as a camp made up of a few tribal members near the Cannonball River in Fort Yates, North Dakota, would eventually grow into a movement that would bring together more than 500 indigenous nations from all over the world to stand for clean water. Unable to travel to North Dakota, but inspired by the reports of the protests, Carol Lindstrom, a citizen of the Turtle Mountain Band of Ojibwe, wrote this story to honor the Standing Rock water protectors and share this historical movement. Sadly, despite the fierce protests, construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline moved forward, with no assurances to the Standing Rock Sioux tribe that the pipeline wouldn't leak and that their water sources would be safe from contamination. Unfortunately, there were leaks in the Dakota Access Pipeline before construction was even complete. Like the Standing Rock Sioux, many tribes and their allies continue to fight pipelines on a daily basis. This is not just a Native American issue. This is a humanitarian issue. It is time that we all become stewards of our planet so we can protect it for our children and our children's children. Water affects and connects us all. We must fight to protect it. Our story today is We Are Water Protectors, written by Carol Lindstrom and illustrated by Michaela Goad. And a special thanks to my daughter, Lauren Loflin, whose voice narrates the story.
Water is the false medicine, Nakamis told me. We come from water. It nourishes us inside our mother's body, as it nourishes us here on Mother Earth. Water is sacred, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. The river's rhythm runs through my veins, runs through my people's veins. My people talk of a black snake that will destroy the land. Spoil the water, poison plants and animals, wreck everything in its path. When my people first spoke of this black snake, they foretold it wouldn't come for many, many years. Now the black snake is here. Its venom bonds the land, courses through the water, making it unfit to drink. Take courage! I must keep the black snake away from my village's water. I must rally my people together. To stand for the water, to stand for the land, to stand as one against the black snake. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. It will not be easy. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, the winged ones, the crawling ones, the four-legged ones, the two-legged, the plants, trees, rivers, lakes, the earth. We are all related. Tears like waterfalls stream down, tracks down my face, tracks down my people's faces. Water has its own spirit, Nakamis told me. Water is alive. Water remembers our ancestors who came before us, she said. We stand with our songs and our drums. We are still here. We are stewards of the earth. Our spirits have not been broken. We are water protectors. We stand. The black snake is in for the fight of its life.
And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God? Micah 6:8. You know, you've got to admit, that sounds pretty good. I mean, first of all, it's really short, just 23 words. And the language is straightforward. It asks a simple question: what does the Lord require of you? And then it immediately provides the answer in 3 parts. Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. As we say in the business, that'll preach. All we need now is an opening and closing hymn and maybe an offering, and we can call it a day. But of course, when it comes to actually living into the fullness of those simple and straightforward requirements, things start to get a bit more complicated. Take that phrase, do justice. Now, what does that mean practically? Social justice work has been part of Unitarian Universalism from its formal beginnings in the 1961 merger. In both the Unitarian and Universalist branches of our history, there are many pioneers involved in social justice areas such as abolition, women's suffrage, temperance, and prison reform, and that's just to name a few. UUs have played important roles in the areas of civil rights, the peace movement, the feminist movement, LGBTQ liberation, and climate justice movements. Our tradition is marked not only by a commitment to a non-creedal faith, but also to social justice work that reflects our theology. And yet it is also true that social justice work has been a source of tension within and among congregations. This is partly a matter of our polity, the way we govern ourselves. Both the Universalists and the Unitarians followed congregational polity. In congregational polity, there is no higher institutional authority than the local congregation. Even today, our national organization is the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association. Well, association of what? Association of congregations. And in the sphere of social justice, our polity places enormous responsibility on the members of each self-governing congregation. Different congregations choose different approaches on how to do social justice work. Some empower a particular committee to be active on behalf of the congregation. Others may form task forces that address specific justice issues or programs. Some governing boards are allowed to make statements on behalf of the congregation, and others are not. Not only is there no consensus on how to do social justice work, there is no consensus on what exactly constitutes social justice work to begin with. The answers vary by congregation, and they might include an emphasis on educational programming or signing legislative petitions, hands-on community work, raising money, protesting, marching, civil disobedience, letter writing campaigns. But you know, this is a matter of profound importance for me. My sense of call to ministry is inextricably wrapped in a call to social justice work. I just don't understand the point of having a liberal faith if it doesn't manifest in social action. My paraphrase of that Christian scripture that faith without works is dead would contend that Unitarian Universalism without social justice is dead. It is an existential question for me. And moreover, I also believe that our conception of social justice is an existential question for every UU congregation and for this faith as a whole. At the UUA General Assembly this year, the Commission on Institutional Change released its report, Widening the Circle of Concern. One of the recurring themes in the report is a call for articulating our justice work through an anti-oppression lens. But what exactly does that mean? Now, I am indebted today to the work of Iris Marion Young for my understanding of anti-oppression. Iris Marion Young was a political theorist and feminist who served as professor of political science at the University of Chicago before her death in 2006. In 1990, in her book, Justice and the Politics of Difference, she states, "Oppression names, in fact, a family of concepts and conditions which I divide into 5 categories: exploitation, marginalization, powerlessness, cultural imperialism, and violence." She called these the 5 faces of oppression. Now, before going any further, it's helpful to note a distinction Young points out between the traditional definition of oppression and its evolving form. In the traditional concept of oppression, there's always the exercise of tyranny by a ruling group. For example, the oppression of Black South Africans under the system of apartheid illustrates this tyranny by a ruling group over an oppressed group. There is not much argument that that is an example of oppression. However, by contrast, in the evolving understanding of oppression, disadvantage and injustice occur for some groups not because of tyrannical coercion, but just in the everyday practices of what Young calls a well-intentioned liberal society. In other words, this is structural oppression. It is embedded in the unquestioned norms and assumptions underlying institutional rules. And this form of oppression cannot be eliminated by getting rid of the tyrants, because the oppressions are systematically reproduced. It is not traditional oppression, but make no mistake, it is oppression. So now let's briefly consider those 5 faces of oppression. The first is exploitation. The central concept here is of a group benefiting unfairly from the work of another group. Now, exploitation is often described in economic terms, the exploitation of the labor of a particular group, but exploitation is not exclusively economic. The second face of oppression is marginalization. Now, our tendency might be to conceive of marginalization as it applies to racialized groups. For example, the marginalization of people of color. However, there is a shamefully large proportion of the population that is subject to marginalization. These include elders, those who may not be very old but are seen as dispensable in the workforce, young people, especially Black or Latinos who find trouble finding those first or second jobs, many single mothers and their children, the involuntarily unemployed, and the emotionally and physically disabled, and indigenous people. Marginalization is a dangerous form of oppression because it excludes from full participation in social life a whole category of people by making them less than. The third face of oppression is powerlessness. This can take the form of denying decision-making power to a group or preventing groups from fully developing their capacities. When a group is denied agency to make its own decisions, this is the oppression of powerlessness. For example, the elderly are oppressed when they have no power to affect change in their own lives. The fourth face of oppression is cultural imperialism. In this oppression, a dominant group's experience is universalized and presented as the norm. When groups speak of being made invisible, often at the same time as being stereotyped and marked as other, then the oppression at play is cultural imperialism. There's a book, Invisible Women, by Carolyn Criado Perez, that is an excellent example of how women's experiences are othered in comparison with white men, who are so often the dominant group, universalized as the norm. The fifth and final face of oppression is violence. Now, this is less about the horror in particular acts of violence than in the social context surrounding them. The oppression of violence seeks to not only make violence against a group possible, but even acceptable. This manifests in the daily knowledge by all members of the oppressed group that they are liable to violation solely because of their group identity. The threat of possible violence deprives the oppressed of freedom and dignity. Much of the Black Lives Matter movement is a response to the oppression of violence. But approaching social justice work from an anti-oppressive lens is in contrast to constructing separate systems of oppression for each group. In other words, the alternative approach would be to address racism, sexism, classism, heterosexism, ageism, etc. as independent and distinct oppressions, and that can easily lead to missing similarities and overlaps in the oppressed groups. It can also lead to competition among the oppressed for attention and for resources that too often are arbitrarily chosen by affinity. From my perspective, these 5 faces of oppression provide useful categories to help in our social justice work in terms of understanding how oppression is working and determining what actions are most effective in actually eliminating oppression. It's a big subject to tackle, and this is only the beginning. Over the course of the remainder of my internship, one of my focuses will be a leadership initiative around social justice. Particularly, I want to understand how the fellowship sees social justice and how the various social justice elements fit together. I hope that you will join me in this exploration to figure out how we can truly become a people committed to anti-oppression work. how we can truly live into the promises of our faith. Blessed be.
Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I hear your heartbeat. Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I hear your heartbeat. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Mother, I hear you in the river song, eternal waters flowing on and on. Mother, I hear you in the river song, eternal waters flowing on and on. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Father, I see you when the eagle flies. Light of the Spirit's gonna take us higher. Father, I see you when the eagle flies. Light of the Spirit's gonna take us higher. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ya hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I hear your heartbeat. Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I hear your heartbeat. Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I hear your heartbeat. Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I hear your heartbeat. Mother, I feel you under my feet. Mother, I hear your heartbeat. Under my feet. Mother, I hear your heartbeat.
Our closing words are from Eric Walker Wickstrom. If you are who you were, and if the person next to you is who he or she was, if none of us has changed since the day we came in here, we have failed. The purpose of this community, of any church, temple, zendo, mosque, is to help its people grow. We do this through encounters with the unknown, in ourselves, in one another, in the other, whoever that might be for us, however hard that might be. Because these encounters have many gifts to offer. So may you go forth from here, not who you were, but who you could be. May it be so.
We are on a journey. We're traveling to fullness. We're building on the pathways of those who came before us. We are called to justice, freedom, equality, truth.
must be erected, old obstacles defeated.
We are called to justice, freedom, equality, truth, compassion, and always love. We're widening our highway on our journey to completeness. Our tunnels cut through hatred, our bridges span between us. We are called to justice, freedom, equality, truth, compassion, and always love. Together we love stronger, together we love sooner, together we love longer, together we love truer. We are called to